National Gun Destruction Day. It's a global effort aimed at permanently removing firearms from circulation to reduce violence and save lives. But in South Africa, the situation is raising serious concern. A new briefing by Gun Free South Africa reveals that the country's firearm licensing system is in crisis, with the application dropping by 74% in recent years. To unpack the latest and a briefing on some of the concerns around it, we're joined on the line by Claire Taylor, who's Gun Free South Africa consultant. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much and welcome to the show, Claire.
Good evening, Mpho. Thanks very much.
With today being International Gun Destruction Day, why is it so important in South Africa and permanently destroying firearms considered such an important crime prevention tool?
So we've had, in the early hours of this morning, there were 2 mass shootings in the Western Cape.
Yes.
12 people were shot. And that indicates how important it is to remove guns that are illegally circulating in communities. So we need to recover them, and we need to trace them back to source to understand where they came from, and then we need to destroy them. And destroying is really the only way to ensure that these guns never leak back into communities. But Gun Free South Africa is launching this new briefing today to show that while on the one hand, government is doing great things in terms of destroying guns. So this morning as well, SAPS destroyed 12,000 guns. On the other hand, they are not closing the tap, leaking legal guns into the illegal pool. Now, in South Africa, the biggest source of illegal guns are licensed guns that are held by civilians and the state. And what Gun Free South Africa has noted and is alerting government to is the fact that our relicensing system has collapsed, which means that hundreds of thousands of gun owners are unlawfully holding their firearms. They may own them, but they are illegally holding them. They are in their possession because their license has expired.
And what's driving that dramatic decline? Why is that?
So there was a constitutional court ruling in 2022 where Fidelity Security Company, a big private security company in South Africa, failed to renew the licenses of 700 of its guns. And it took the case to the Constitutional Court that ruled that those firearms remained the property of Fidelity Services. So they had to apply for new firearm licenses because an expired license cannot be renewed. And that ruling extended to all gun owners in South Africa. The thing is that the court did not rule that even if you own the gun, that you don't need to have a license. You still need to have a valid license. But the ruling has been interpreted by gun owners, and it's misinformation and disinformation by gun lobby groups to tell gun owners that because the gun is your property, you don't need to have a valid license. And that isn't true. And SAPS and the government is not correcting that perception. So we're having on average about 120,000 gun owners every year are failing to renew their firearm licenses and so are in illegal possession.
So with those dangerous perceptions and fewer people renewing their licenses, what happens to those firearms?
Well, I think we need to firstly step back and say that relicensing has 4 key purposes. The first is to make sure that the gun owner is fit and proper, that they remain competent, that they still need their gun, and that they still have their gun in their possession. Now, our courts have recognized that when a license has expired, that gun is at increased risk of being lost or stolen. And we're seeing incredibly high loss and theft numbers in South Africa. Civilians report on average 8,000 guns lost or stolen every year. That's 22 guns every day that are reported lost or stolen and leaking into the illegal pool of guns. The courts also noted that those guns for which licenses have expired are at increased risk of being used either by the gun owner in a situation where they harm themselves or others around them. So it's absolutely critical that those guns at increased risk because they are outside the system are brought back in. And the police have been aware of the situation since 2022 and haven't done anything to clarify what gun owners need to do in order to comply with the law. And they haven't addressed the misconceptions that have founded, where gun owners think that because the gun is their property, they no longer need a valid license.
So, because of this situation, I know that you've warned that the relicensing system is in a crisis. How would you combine the crux of the matter? Is it more of an administrative failure? Is it problem around policy, or or is it just enforcement when it comes to understanding the crisis that's at hand?
I think it's all three issues. So it's clear that there are problems with the law, and the law hasn't taken into account recent court rulings. And that's the importance of amending the Firearms Control Act
Yes.
so that gun owners understand what their responsibility is. But it's also an issue of enforcement. In 2016, SAP a directive that was very clear in terms of what gun owners were expected to do in order to relicense their firearms. And there was a 160% increase in relicensing applications then. So the message then is when the law is implemented, compliance follows. However, following a range of court challenges, we've seen that SAP seems to be paralyzed. Government isn't clear in what its messaging is. There's huge amounts of mis and disinformation being perpetuated by groups. And so government needs to take a firm hold of the situation, and we're urging them to do three things. One, issue a clear communication to gun owners who have expired licenses, what they need to do in order to rectify the situation. Second, to develop a strategy to reach out to those hundreds of thousands of gun owners with expired licenses. And thirdly, amend the Firearms Control Act so that gun owners are very clear on what they need to do.
And very lastly, before we let you go, I mean, one of the big criticisms often raised is that stricter firearm controls mainly affect law-abiding citizens rather than criminals. How do you respond to those who argue that the tougher regulation is not going to stop illegal guns from circulating?
So in South Africa, the biggest source of illegal guns are licensed gun owners, particularly civilians, but also the police. And so while we do need to focus on recovering guns, illegal guns that are already circulating in our communities and destroying them, as days like Gun Destruction Day facilitate, we have to go upstream and we have to stop live guns leaking into the illegal pool in the first place. And that means tightening controls over licensed guns held by civilians and the state.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Gun Free South Africa consultant Claire Taylor, giving us some of the action that needs to be taken by government officials when it comes to ensuring that there are legal and licensed firearms in the country. Processes must be simplified, communication must be clear, and of course a strategy must be developed on how to contact gun owners whose licenses have expired to ensure that they are abiding by the law.